It's a wonderful Monday morning. Grab your cup of coffee. We're in Mark 10:49. And it reads, "And Jesus stood still and commanded them to be called. And they called the blind man, saying unto him, Be of good comfort, rise, he has called thee." Now, if you remember last week, we talked about blind Bartimaeus when we looked at true faith is hearing faith of Christ, and true faith is affirming faith of Christ. True faith is overcoming faith by Christ, and true faith follows Christ. Well, in this last section of the same story, we're going to look at the grace, because it was all about faith and grace. And this week, we're going to look at grace comes, grace calls, and grace comforts. There. Now, if you notice in Mark 10:49, it says, "And Jesus stood still." You see, grace comes. And it comes with poise and it comes with purpose. And Jesus stood still. Grace comes with poise. You see, Jesus stood still and gave his full attention to the beggar. He rested his eyes upon the beggar. He was not texting. He was not multitasking. His full attention was on the beggar. And as the beggar looked up, he could see help and hope in the Lord. But not only does it come with poise, it comes with purpose. Jesus stood still. It was no accident Jesus was walking by the way and the beggar happened to be along the way. No doubt from the foundation of the world it was planned. A moment in time. Because Jesus was not only willing and able to help, but he knew the help that was needed and when the help would come. Because grace comes with poise and purpose. Grace also calls. Notice the next part of the verse. And commanded him to be called. You see, grace calls absolutely and with authority. You see, notice grace calls with absoluteness. And commanded him to be called. You see, grace is assured who it is seeking to reach. Grace is not ashamed of being seen with the beggar. He's not ashamed of the beggar who smells and stinks. It does not have fear of what others think. It's not afraid of being labeled wimpy or foolish or stupid or some other name calling. It fears no name calling. It calls without shame because it's absolute. But notice the authority. And commanded him to be called. Notice the mandate by the grace. He calls the beggar to be called. But if you'll notice, what did the crowd say? It says, many charged him that he should not hold his peace in verse 48. Can you see the surprise in their eyes? Wow, they're saying, be quiet, shut up, the Messiah's coming, just sit there and pay attention. And all of a sudden, the Messiah, Jesus Christ, calls him personally. There's an absoluteness to it. Grace comes with authority and absoluteness. Now, grace also comes with comfort. Notice it says, be of good comfort. You see, when grace comes and grace calls, grace comforts with goodness and gloriousness. You see, the comfort that is good, this comfort is not greedy. He did not come to get anything from the beggar. He came to give to the beggars. You see, the greedy are comfortable at the expense of others. Liars are comfortable by the deceit of others. But grace is comfortable giving to others, wholesomely, fully, and completely. Grace comforts with goodness, but it also comforts with gloriousness. You see, blind Bartimaeus had to rise. Notice the scripture says, rise, he calleth thee. You see, grace rises one to glory. There's an awesome splendor of Jesus Christ. You see, blind Bartimaeus would rise far more than just a physical sight. He would rise to follow and live with Jesus. Grace comforts with goodness and gloriousness. When grace comes, it comes with poise and purpose. And when grace calls, it calls with absoluteness and authority. And when grace comforts, it comforts in goodness and gloriousness. The only question is, are you receiving the grace of Jesus Christ? Have you received him? I hope so, because you're missing out by rejecting Jesus Christ. This is Pastor Bart Getz from Faith Baptist Church, coming to you from Farmington, Missouri. Have a great, good, and glorious week. God bless.